So today we're doing a sew-in takedown, and we're going to do a reinstall of a sew-in with a closure. Right now you see me taking the client's hair down, and I'm using scissors, and I also have something else called a seam ripper that I got off of Amazon, and I'll link it. Here it is right here. I got it out of the sewing department, so basically where they have all the sewing goods, I got it off of there. So I will link that in the description if possible. If not, check my channel link so you can see where you can get this seam ripper from. So that's what I'm using right now to carefully take down the client's hair. I'm being careful not to cut her real hair. I'm just trying to make sure I cut the thread, and that's it. If you cut the weave hair, that's fine if they're not going to be using it again, but do not cut the client's hair. For this particular install, the client wore bangs, so we did a beehive foundation for her sew-in. And this time I installed a frontal. I'm really not familiar with frontals like that. I'm more comfortable with closure. So, but the frontal turned out okay. It turned out all right. But it was easier for me being that the client wore bangs and she didn't plan on wearing her hair back. So that kind of worked out. So, but this next install that we're going to do, we're going to be adding a closure in the top instead of the frontal. Right here, that seam ripper started getting a little dull on me. I've used it probably altogether about 10 times, so now it's starting to get dull, so I went back to using my shears. And these shears that I'm using, these are not the same shears that I would use for cutting a client's hair. These are shears that I would use for like trimming braids, cutting thread, stuff like that. But I don't use those same scissors when I go to do a trim or a haircut on my client's hair. I have special scissors that I use for that. Special shears, excuse me, shears, not scissors. Scissors are for cutting paper, shears are for cutting hair. Now I'm just removing the net from her hair. I don't have a special type of net in mind that I use. This net in particular right here, this one didn't have any stretch to it, and it worked okay. That's the net that I usually use, but this time when I went to do the install, I didn't have any more of those nets, so I used the one with a little bit of elastic in it, and it worked out fine too. It worked out perfectly, so I don't have a preference when it comes to nets. Sometimes I don't need to use a net. Sometimes the clients prefer me use a net. They request it. This particular client has fine hair, so I decided to use a net for her hair. And with a client, when they have fine hair, it's good to use a net, because that way, instead of having to rely on a braid to be able to stitch the hair down, you could just go ahead and stitch the wefts down in between the braids and use the net in order to stitch the weft hair too. So that's why nets come in handy. Now I'm just using a tail comb to take down the client's braid from ends all the way up to the roots. And I'm going to take down this entire beehive carefully. And after I do that, I'm going to make sure I comb that client's hair out, as far as like combing out all the buildup and stuff like that that could be left behind from braids. A lot of times people, when they go to take down their sew-ins, they feel like they could just take the braid down and just go right ahead and start shampooing. No, you have to go in and you have to detangle that hair. You have to pull that hair apart. You got to get all that buildup out, and you have to comb that buildup out. And you also should go in with a good detangling brush and brush your hair from roots to ends before you try to do any shampooing, because if you try to shampoo your hair with all that buildup and dead hair left in your hair, it's going to mat up and it's going to turn into a big dreadlock, and you don't want that. So comb the hair out thoroughly first before you shampoo it. Before putting any water or anything in your hair, you need to make sure you comb that hair out first. I'm trying to get a better, closer angle for you. There we go. So yep, just taking my time going around that beehive. And you're going to see me pulling hair out and throwing it in the trash. That's just the synthetic hair that I used. I like to put synthetic hair in the braid when I'm going around, even when I'm doing a braid in a circle, because it just gives the hair more security. And with the video sped up like this, at certain points it looks like I'm being rough, but I'm really not. I'm actually not being rough at all on my client's hair. I'm being really gentle. It just looks that way because the video is sped up. But in certain instances, you'll see my client actually fell asleep when I was taking her hair down, and throughout the detangling process too. She was actually sleepy because she flew in from 2 states over to come see me. And this client, she does that every 2 or 3 months for me to do her sew-in. She'll fly in from a couple states over to come and see me. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I have a client like that that's loyal to me. All right, now we're getting into the install. Basically, it's not too much going on here. Instead of doing the beehive, this time I did cornrows going down on each side with a part on the right side, because my client is actually going to wear a part this time. She's going to wear a closure with a part. So that's why you have that little space up there where I cut the net out, because she's going to be wearing a closure. And with the part in that closure, I don't want the net to be there, because I don't want you to be able to see the net underneath her part or through the lace. So yeah, I'm just going through sewing the hair in. And that's all we're doing on this part right here. So on this part, I already have her closure laid down, and I'm just going to go and finish sewing in the rest of those tracks. When I sew my tracks, sometimes I go through the weft, sometimes I go underneath the weft. Usually when I get to the edges of the hair, I like to go through the weft just to make sure that that hair is nice and secure. I'm going through the weft right there a couple times too before I get to the end. Going through the weft again. So here's an example of what I'm talking about when I say I could just go ahead and sew that weft down to the net. As you can see, the client doesn't have a corn roll in that space right there. So instead of me just trying to go ahead and skip to the next braid to add a stitch, I can add stitching all in between those braids by using a net. So that's what the net is good for. So basically I'm just showing you how I take down sew-ins and how I install them. Right here I'm adding a little heat to the ends of those wefts because the wefts were kind of scrunched up and I wanted them to lay a little bit flatter, so that way when I went to sew it down it'll be nice and flat. So that's what I was using the flat iron for on that piece. But yeah, I just want you to watch me sew in some hair. If you want a more detailed video of how I do it and the entire process, the styling, the closure, and everything else, I'll do that later on. But as of now, I just want you to see me stitching the hair, and I want you to see me how to properly take down the sew-in as well. And again, if you're in the DFW, Louisville, Texas area, the link is in my channel links. If you want to book this particular style with me, a sew-in with closure, if you want to book this style with me, it's in my channel links. So that's pretty much all for this video. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe.